Hey guys, it's Lindsay with High Altitude Astrology. I'm here with another daily dose for Friday, October 13th. And today I wanted to continue to discuss the Harvey Weinstein issue, but from another angle. Basically, what has been happening since this story broke about him is a lot of actresses in Hollywood have been speaking up about their experiences, and or other actors and actresses have been condemning the behavior of Harvey Weinstein. And one of those has been the actor Ben Affleck. Well, Ben Affleck has a long history of working with Harvey Weinstein, going back to the movie Good Will Hunting, which he and Matt Damon wrote and Harvey Weinstein produced. So what Ben Affleck said about the issue was basically that he was appalled by it and, really felt badly for any women who had suffered and that kind of thing. Basically implying that he didn't really have any knowledge of any of Harvey's behavior. Well, then another actress, Rose McGowan, responded to Ben Affleck's statement by saying, "You're lying. I specifically told you about an incident that I experienced with him, and, what you're saying is implying that you didn't know." Well, he didn't respond to that specifically, but in that kind of Twitter war, another person posted a video online of Ben Affleck when he was 31, was being interviewed by another actress on MTV, and you can't fully see it, but apparently he groped this woman's breast. And the actress did respond saying, "Yeah, basically that did happen, and I was really young and I didn't know how to deal with it, so I just kind of laughed it off." And then Ben Affleck said on Twitter that he formally apologized to that actress. So he is kind of inadvertently being drawn into this Harvey Weinstein story, and I started getting curious as to the astrology of Ben Affleck and why at this time is this happening in his chart or in his life. So just to let you know, if you want to follow along, Ben Affleck's birthday is August 15th, 1972. He was born in Berkeley, California, and we do have a time of 2:53 a.m. So this makes Ben a Leo, and at 22 degrees. He has a conjunction to his sun out of sign to Mars at 0 degrees Virgo. And his sun is pretty well aspected. It trines Saturn at 18 degrees Gemini. It sextiles Saturn at 18 degrees Gemini. It trines Chiron at 17 degrees Aries. It also trines Jupiter at 28 degrees Sagittarius. He does have a square, an out of sign square from the Sun to Neptune at 2 degrees Scorpio. 2 degrees Sagittarius. But other than that, his sun is pretty, well aspected and strengthened by a lot of sextiles and a lot of trines. Where I'm drawn to in his chart is actually his Venus. So he is a Cancer rising at 8 degrees, and his Venus sits right on his rising at 7 degrees Cancer. Now, if you go more deeply into the aspects to his Venus, it's actually involved in 2 different T-squares in his chart. The first one is with a square from Venus to Pluto, Venus at 7 degrees Cancer squaring Pluto at 0 degrees Libra. And the Venus is also opposite, again, it's out of sign, but opposite Jupiter at 28 degrees Sagittarius. So when you think of Venus squared Pluto, the first thing that comes to my mind has to do with issues of power around loving energy and relationships. You know, this can be someone who can be very, you know, very, what's the word? He's very into the relationships that he's into. You know, he wants to really feel secure in them, and he wants to, in some ways, have control over them. But also, it can be some kind of sort of energy where it's like expressed more subtly, and there might be kind of a hiddenness or a secrecy around his sexuality, and you know, people not knowing exactly what he does on the sexual, you know, realm. It can just be kind of a hidden nature around sexuality. There can also be kind of a compulsive nature around sexuality, because with Pluto, if you're not really kind of consciously expressing it through transforming yourself, that energy gets repressed, and then it starts to kind of like control you from an unconscious or a subconscious level. And that could be some of this behavior that we have seen in some of these videos. It's kind of like this, I mean, I don't want to say predatory, because it's, you know, it's on the lighter level of flirting kind of energy, but it's definitely kind of like crossing boundaries and not really being fully aware of how that's affecting other people, you know. So that's the first part of the T-square. Then that Venus also opposes Jupiter, and that just makes him basically, you know, really into relationships and his loving energy, and it just amplifies. That's what Jupiter does. In the opposition, you can kind of get this need to really sort of balance the two. So in some ways, it's like the need to kind of balance that desire principle, that Venus desire principle of, oh, I want this, and I want that, and I want this person, and I want that person, because Jupiter's just like, makes everything bigger, you know? So with the opposition, it's about somehow finding the balance between, you know, yes, getting what you want, but in some ways not being sort of gluttonous about it, or, you know, going overboard in that respect. And then the final piece then of the T-square would be the Jupiter squaring the Pluto. And again, when you're dealing with Pluto, you're dealing with power. You're dealing with willpower. That's part of the Plutonian energy. So with Jupiter, the planet of expansion, squaring that Pluto, it's like somehow they're trying to work together, but they tend to sort of bump into each other when they do. So with Jupiter Pluto, you can definitely get people who have a lot of willpower and are capable of really great feats and creating, and, you know, really putting their energy into producing. But you can also get people who tend to, because Jupiter also rules our beliefs and our philosophies, people kind of really tend to sort of like hold on really deeply to how they feel about things, or how they think things should be done. And they can get almost a little bit sort of too passionate, or just, you know, my way or the highway is about things. So all of these three planets, Venus, Jupiter, Pluto, are kind of tied up in these stressed angles together, which to me can just be related to some of the things we've been seeing and hearing from people who have had experiences with Ben Affleck around relationship, and around, you know, sort of this coming on to them uninvited kind of energy. Now, the other thing that's going on is this other T-square to the Venus as well. Again, Venus is his loving energy. This is the square. It's a very wide square from Chiron in Aries in his 10th house. And the other square is from Uranus in Libra in his 4th house. So let's start with the Venus-Uranus square. when you have Venus, again, your loving energy, and Uranus, it's this energy of sort of like the wild card, the freedom seeker, you know. In square, it's like hard to manage because it's like you want love, you want relationship, but Uranus wants freedom, wants to just like, you know, do whatever it wants, whenever it wants, you know. So this might be a challenge in his life to actually, you know, be somebody who can stay in relationship for lengths of time, who can, you know, really commit, because there's just this part of him that wants to always sort of have his freedom. And, you know, this could also, again, going back, relate to some of that behavior with the square between these two energies, where you just kind of act in ways that, like, well, you think it's okay, you know, hey, this is how I feel and I'm free to do what I feel, but it doesn't always take into account like how it affects other people. The second part of the T-square then would be the Venus in Cancer squaring the Chiron in Aries. And Venus squared Chiron relates to some kind of wounded energy, that's Chiron, in relation to his loving energy. So really, even though he might be this person on the outside that seems like really confident, he's a Leo, conjunct Mars, you know, he's got a lot of self-confidence and ability to assert himself out into the world, maybe deeper inside, there's a part of him that he struggles with to actually feel, because Chiron in Aries has a wound around self-worth. And so when it's squaring Venus, there's something around self-worth in relationships that he's actually kind of struggling with. So some sort of wound related to his loving energy. And sometimes when people have that wound around self-worth or self-confidence, they can tend to do things that they might not do if they had more of awareness around that part of themselves, or if they had really explored looking into and healing that part of themselves, which may also explain some of that behavior towards other people. It could come from a place of actually kind of deep insecurity. But what's interesting about his chart is that right now, transiting Pluto in Capricorn is moving through Ben's chart in the 7th house, which is the house of relationships, and it's making a square to that Capricorn in Aries in the 10th house. And this is a once-in-a-lifetime transit for him. So what it's doing is it's bringing up the opportunity to transform, to heal, to change, to let go of perhaps old ways, old behaviors in relationship that are connected to this wounded self. And it would be great for him if he wanted to explore that further, you know, through therapy, or even just spending time stepping back and sort of looking at, maybe reflecting on some of the way he, you know, has behaved in his life. So that's a significant transit that's going on in his life. Some other activity happening in his chart is that progressed Jupiter is moving into Capricorn in his chart. Natally, his Jupiter is in Sagittarius. And again, that Jupiter is part of that T-square in his chart, connected to his Venus, his loving energy. And right now, Jupiter has just moved into the sign of Capricorn. So Sag is more like, hey, it's a party, let's have a party. Capricorn's more like, all right, let us get serious here for a moment. And with Jupiter, the planet of expansion, the planet of philosophies, the planet of how we understand the larger workings of life, you know, through our spiritual perspectives, through our philosophical perspectives, has moved into a new sign. It won't happen again in his lifetime. So this is really another indication of a time where he's going to be able to kind of maybe have a more serious look at things, have a more grounded perspective where it's like, life's not all just, you know, a big, huge bowl of cherries, you know, it's about responsibility, and it's about like, you know, being an authority and having like a sort of grounded sense of self, and having like your reputation in some ways kind of like solidified or just more grounded, I guess. Then what else is happening is that progressed Uranus, so his natal Uranus is at 15, but his progressed Uranus is at 17 right now, and that happens to exactly oppose that Chiron, the natal Chiron in Aries in the 10th house. So this is interesting because that Chiron's in the 10th. So there's some sort of wound that's playing out in his career, you know, and it's really related to a sense of self-worth. With Uranus opposing it, Uranus in Libra, it's coming by or moving in alignment with the Pluto, and it's kind of bringing some higher perspective. That's what Uranus does. It's electric, it's lightning, it's sort of the energy of some kind of higher knowing that just we become aware of. And it's in the sign of Libra, balance, harmony, relationships. So that energy is opposing that Chiron in Aries in his 10th house right now. So it's really probably just bringing up another opportunity to become more aware of perhaps how he acts out his woundedness, and allow him to really kind of have more enlightenment around it or more understanding around it. And let's see, finally, the Chiron in his chart, now we've already talked about his natal Chiron being in Aries, the progressed Chiron, the solar arc Chiron has moved into Gemini this year. So it's at 0 degrees Gemini, and to have any planet or asteroid move into a new sign, it means you're beginning to express that energy in a new way. So here we have the wound now moving into an intellectual sign, an air sign of Gemini. So there's some sort of healing, wounding healing around maybe his thought process, you know, how he's been up until this point relating to his wound, and now there's a new way of being able to kind of understand it and to process how it relates to his life, and to you know, talk about it. You know, maybe it's why he does feel that he can say, you know, yeah, what I'm seeing in Harvey Weinstein's behavior isn't something that I support. Look, we all have our shadows, and we all have, you know, a potential to work with them, to learn about them, to grow from them. So perhaps he's at a time in his life with this Chiron and Gemini where there's some opportunity here to look at perhaps the ways that he's thought about himself in relationship to his wounded self, and how he can kind of, you know, maybe take on a new perspective about it all. We're all human. We're all here, you know, trying to do our best, and every moment is an opportunity to wake up and to, you know, learn and to sort of renew our way of going out into the world, you know? So I guess I can just say, you know, good luck to Ben at this time. I really hope that he's choosing to do a lot of healing as well. And that is my interpretation of Ben Affleck's astrology chart. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you like my video. And you can also reach me for readings at lindsayc73@gmail.com. That's LINDSAYC73@gmail.com. Thanks so much for watching. Adios.